Yo, what is going on, guys? It is Tim Burzes here from Amplified Metabolism, back to give you more content about metabolism, about health, about how to improve the function of every single cell in your body to create more energy and all the good stuff, everything that we want. Today's topic, we are talking about one of the, people call it a drug, but I wouldn't really even call it a drug. At one point, it was almost a vitamin. One of the most beneficial compounds that you can actually it's super cheap. You can get it at a grocery store. You can get it at your pharmacy or wherever. That helps so much with inflammation, but also a wide host of other things. Tons and tons of benefits to this one compound. Now, what is it? Salicylic acid, but more commonly known as aspirin. You probably heard, aspirin's the wonder drug. There's so many people who get great results from it long term. Helps against like heart disease, helps against a bunch of other diseases. But the problem is there's not a lot, there's actually a lot of research around it, but the problem is that nobody really wants to pursue it because where's the money in pursuing research on aspirin? You can buy it for 99 cents at your Walgreens. There's not a lot of financial backing for it, but that doesn't make it any less effective. So here's a short list of the benefits of aspirin. Let's start with like the normal ones that we've seen in the research. Things like improved insulin sensitivity, neuroprotection, anti-inflammatory, improves liver function and helps with liver regeneration, which is especially important for metabolism because liver is so important for metabolism, especially if you have any kind of like cirrhosis or stuff like that. It's anti-estrogen because it negatively affects the aromatase enzyme. It's anti-aromatase, which is the enzyme that converts testosterone into estrogen. So it actually helps to decrease estrogen. It helps with your bone health and your calcium regulation, and part of that might be from increased CO2, but it actually helps to store calcium in the bones, preventing osteoporosis, rather than in the soft tissue where we don't want it, where we call this calcification of tissues. It actually helps your gut health and can help heal if you've gone through any kind of like irritable bowel syndrome or like celiacs. Taking aspirin for a while can actually help to heal your gut. It's also antifungal. And those are all benefits that, maybe they're related to metabolism, but they're also just regular health benefits. But there's also a whole list of benefits just for your metabolism. We got increased oxygen uptake and increased CO2 production. And if you've seen any of my videos on CO2 production, you probably know that CO2 production is important for oxygen uptake. So I would actually argue that aspirin is activating that oxidative phosphorylation pathway in your body, ramping it up, producing more CO2, which is then helping more oxygen get into the cell because it starts that positive spiral that I've talked about before. It also reduces the damage from oxidation. So things like when polyunsaturated fats randomly peroxidize, the free radicals will affect the mitochondria in terrible ways and shut them down, prevent energy production. And the same thing happens with anything that creates free radicals. But because aspirin is so anti-inflammatory and so good at shutting down oxidative stress, it has huge benefits here for helping to prevent the damage from things like PUFA. It also blocks the formation of free fatty acids, basically helping to push your body towards the glucose burning, that oxidative phosphorylation that's so important, and away from the fat burning. Now remember, that doesn't mean you don't lose fat. It just means that your fat burning is a lower total percentage of your total energy output. And if you raise that energy output to a higher degree, you can actually burn more fat because the percentage is still small, but the total amount might be bigger. And finally, it actually can help with mitochondrial uncoupling. So mitochondrial uncoupling is basically where your energy production naturally is so far above what you need that your mitochondria will still go through the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain, still making the energy. But the last step where it creates ATP, which is the cellular energy currency of the cell, that last step gets skipped. And instead, heat is released, but no ATP is created. So it's called an uncoupling protein because it uncouples energy production from the pathway. So basically what happens is you're still burning, you're still creating CO2, you're still producing energy, but you're actually leaving it all as heat and none of it as the chemical energy of ATP. And aspirin can actually help with that. So now, of course, the question is, why does this happen? Like what's going on with aspirin? Why is it so beneficial? And as it turns out, it actually is mimicking the downstream effects of mead acid. Mead acid is an unsaturated fat that your body produces on its own, but only when it doesn't have any of the other polyunsaturated fats that negatively suppress an entire class of enzymes important for creating that mead acid. Now, a lot of people view mead acid as a bad thing, that it's indicating you're EFA deficient. You're basically your you're deficient in essential fatty acids. But the entire concept that there are essential fatty acids, that, you know, the omega-6s and the omega-3s, that they're essential to your health, is completely flawed. In all honesty, what happens is when you're depleted in your EFAs, your metabolism gets ramped up and your nutritional requirements get ramped up. And all of the symptoms that they originally thought were EFA deficiency symptoms actually turned out just to be deficiencies in things like B5, B6, zinc, probably a couple other minerals. But the thing is, they hadn't discovered them at that time, because the study that all of this is based on was back in like 1920s or 1930s or something like that. So when you actually look at it and you realize, oh, okay, those basically all is happening is that your energy expenditure was going way up because you weren't exposed to the EFAs, the essential fatty acids, those polyunsaturated fats. You weren't exposed to those. Metabolic rate increased, nutritional requirements increased, but we didn't know those nutrients even existed. So we saw that, okay, EFAs were dangerous. But now we know better. Now we can actually show, and it has been shown, that you can correct all of the symptoms of EFA deficiency by eating more nutrition. So those meat acids are extremely anti-inflammatory, extremely good for your metabolism, and extremely good for basically making the entire organism, your entire body, really, really resistant to stress, to the point where you can produce so much energy that there's nothing that's going to actually excite your cell more than it's already producing. And a lot of that goes back to the uncoupling proteins, because you're producing so much that you're releasing a lot as heat. If you need more energy, you basically stop producing as much as pure heat and start producing more of it from the normal energy production in oxidative phosphorylation. But all in all, basically, meat acid is a sign that your metabolism is ramped up, a sign that you are very resistant to stress, and that you're burning tons and tons of calories. And that you're also producing a lot of the anti-inflammatory things that you need to keep your stress levels low and your body working well. Now, in the real world, it's really hard to avoid all of the polyunsaturated fats, and most people have had, you get exposed to them, whether you're eating out in a restaurant, whether you're eating, some food, or they're even in eggs. It's really hard to be completely EFA deficient. So usually meat acid is still suppressed. And even if it wasn't, it would take a long time to get to the point where you could actually produce it. But since meat acid is so hard to actually get your body to produce because of exposure to these polyunsaturated fats, what ends up happening is all of those class of enzymes that create the anti-inflammatory things that shut down enzymes like the cyclooxygenase enzyme, the COX enzyme, that produces the negative prostaglandins involved in inflammation, because those enzymes basically are getting upregulated from the polyunsaturated fats, you get inflammation. But if you take aspirin, you're causing those same downstream effects that would be produced if meat acid were produced. And that is basically shutting down the COX enzymes and ramping up the enzymes that are responsible for the anti-inflammatory effects in your body. Now, with all of that out of the way, how much aspirin should you take? Is it safe? Are there any warnings? What should you worry about? Generally, I take like 325 milligrams a day. It's just in this one pill form. But looking in the research, a lot of it shows a lot of beneficial effects, anywhere from 300 milligrams on up to 3.6 grams, which seems pretty high. Like that's 10 of those pills that I was just saying I take. Now, that's actually considered a low dose in the research. And a lot of the research showing positive effects with even higher doses is up in the 4 to 6 gram range. Now, I'm not necessarily saying to go that high, but it is worth noting that it's pretty safe. If you can go up to 6 grams of aspirin and not have any negative effects, then if you're going to be supplementing with 300 milligrams, 600 milligrams, something like that, you're okay. There's nothing to worry about. And that's kind of the range that I would say, somewhere between 300 milligrams to 500 milligrams. If you wanted to experiment with going higher, you could, but that's on you. You got to make sure you do all your research on your own to look at the actual studies and see it. And I'll link the one study that shows the higher doses helping in a neuroprotective sense below. And there's a bunch of other studies showing positive effects with aspirin. So basically, it's safe. Aim for 300 milligrams to 500 milligrams, maybe up to a gram if you really want to try it. But you can go higher, and it's been done in the research without any negative consequences. Now, the one warning that you do have to worry about: aspirin is thinning for the blood. It prevents the coagulation that normally happens whenever you cut yourself or something. And because it makes it harder for your blood to clot, you need to make sure you're getting enough of the vitamins that are important for clotting blood, specifically vitamin K. If you're getting enough vitamin K, you should be perfectly fine taking high doses of aspirin and there won't be any problems with it. I actually noticed before I started taking vitamin K, and this is actually before I was taking aspirin or anything like that, I would get nosebleeds pretty easily. Now that I've been taking vitamin K, even with the aspirin, like nosebleeds never happen. If I cut myself or something, it clots right away. I don't really have to worry about like bleeding for 20 minutes before it's ready to stop or whatever. So vitamin K is really important for that. Additionally, if you're on any medication that affects blood coagulation or blood thinning or anything like that, you probably want to do some research and check if you can take aspirin at the same time. But assuming that you're healthy, assuming that you're someone who is just in the low metabolism hypothyroid state and you want to take some action to help improve your metabolism, to reduce the inflammation, get yourself out of that stress mode, aspirin is super helpful. So I'll throw a couple studies that I found down below, but there's far more out there than I can even talk about in this one video. But in general, aspirin is just super protective. So that is all I have for today. Hopefully you got a lot out of that. Aspirin's pretty cool. Like I said, there's a ton of research around it, but nobody really wants to pursue it or create any kind of hype or media hype around it because it's so cheap. Nobody can make money off of aspirin except for the aspirin companies, but when you're looking at pharmaceutical companies that can make billions of dollars off of some drug, they're not going to fund research for aspirin. It just doesn't make sense. It's kind of fucked up, but that's just how economy works, I guess. But that's where you have to dive in. You have to look deeper. You can't just take what they say at face value. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share. You can subscribe right here. If you haven't taken the metabolism quiz yet, click the link below. Go find out what your metabolism score is. It'll tell you where you are on the spectrum, and then I'll give you a custom video based on your score that will help you with some next steps. If you're interested in my full course, Ignite Your Metabolism, that link is also below. You can go check that out there. We've been getting a lot of great feedback with that so far, and I'm pretty excited about it and how well it's been doing. And as always, keep looking good, keep smelling good, keep being you because you're fucking awesome and I love it. I am gonna get out of here right now and I will talk to you later. Peace.